Welcome everybody. Tonight we have a special treat with Major Michael Jung, who is the lead officer of the Salvation Army, one of the great missionary groups for 150 plus years worldwide and 130 plus years wide, 130 plus years in the city of New Bedford as well. And so it's a ministry that's boots on the ground. On a personal level, it's one of my favorites. And we've worked together, Major Jung and myself, for a few years, and also some other guys that are in this meeting here tonight. So it's a great privilege to have Major Jung with us tonight. So we're going to hear his testimony, where he came from, what God's done in his life, and where he is now, and anything else he cares to talk about. So Major Jung, thank you, sir, for being with us, and it's all yours.
All right, thank you so much. Just call me Mike for this meeting. You don't have to call me Major. You don't have to call me Major Jung. Mike is fine. I appreciate the respect. Well, let me start. My family just celebrated 40 years of coming to America. I was born in South Korea. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was born in South Korea, and I came to the United States when I was 6 years old with my mom and my dad and my brother. And my parents sold everything they owned to bring my brother and I to this beautiful country. I have a great respect for America, and I have great respect for this country. And they came to the United States in 1980, October 1980, and we came here and to the United States, and we settled down. My parents, both hardworking folks, got jobs the best they can. They didn't speak in English, but one of the jobs that they got over the years was they worked in a sweatshop. And there were days when my parents would work hard and they wouldn't get paid. And that had a tremendous impact in who I was, simply because of the fact that here's my parents working hard in this land of the free, land of a country that is supposed to be rich, and is robbing my parents of their hard work, of what they have worked hard for. And that affected who I am over the years, and my desire. And then there were other things that I saw in life that I wasn't happy with. And I grew very angry as a young child. Even in my personal life, in my own personal being, I was partially deaf when I was a kid. I had a speech problem. I couldn't talk because I had polyps in my throat, which at that time they couldn't surgically remove. And so it impacted who I was. And I grew very angry. But all through these times, God was with us. And I didn't understand that. I could not comprehend that. My parents would say, everything is okay. God is going to bless our family. And I'm looking at my parents and I'm like, how is God blessing our family? And I said to my parents, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you. I love you, mom and dad. I'll take care of you. I'll get a good job when I grow up. I'll make sure I make a lot of money. I'll make sure we have a nice place to live. I'll take care of you. And on the other hand, I knew God was calling me. I received my calling at a very young age. I got saved when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, received my calling when I was 8 years old. But at the same time, with all the anger that I was dealing with, even though God was calling me, I was still angry about everything at a very young age. And as I was growing older, I wanted to take care of my parents. And so I was living a double life. I was very active in the church. I knew God was calling me into the ministry. I was living a double life. I was doing what in front of people, what God wanted me to do. And then behind the scene, I was doing what I wanted to do. And it led me in two different roads. In front of Christians, in front of believers, I was acting one way. In front of non-believers, I was acting totally different. And then 16 years old, when I was 12 years old, my dad got into a car accident, and he was forced to retire at the age of 40 years old. and he retired at 40, and it just ate me up. And so I got to the point where I got very, very depressed. I lived through depression for close to 8, maybe 9, 10 years of my life. But in front of people, no one knew I was depressed. No one knew that I was going through depression. But behind the scene, I was very, very depressed. And until my aunt Penny said, "You need to snap out of this. What's going on?" I said, this is not good. And she was not a believer, and she still snapped me out of it. She spoke the word of truth to me. She grew up in the church. She knew of God. She attended the Salvation Army when she was younger. She even led my dad to the Lord. It's an interesting thing that sometimes we have people who might not know God closely could lead somebody to the Lord. She led my dad to the Lord, and my dad came to the Salvation Army in Korea. And when he was here in the United States, one of his new bosses, not in the sweatshop, but another job, led him back to the Salvation Army. And that's how I came to the Salvation Army at the age of 12 years old. When I first heard about the Salvation Army, like everybody else, why are we going to the thrift store for church? We all think about the thrift stores, we think about the bells. And I said, why are we going to the thrift store? And my dad looked at me and said, you have a choice. You can come with me. You don't have to come with me. But in the Korean culture, when your dad tells you to do something, you do it. It's not an option. You follow along and you do it. And so I went. And I remember being there, and the Mrs. Major at that time looked at me, and she said to me, there's not a lot here, but I can tell you one thing. I can guarantee that we will love you. Did you hear that? I can guarantee we will love you. And that really touched me, because my parents were not touchy people. They never said I love you. I've never heard this from anybody to this point. And when she said that, I was like, what? You don't even know me and you say you love me? How can you love me if you don't know me? And it really struck a heart. It really struck deeply in me. Even though I was still walking a double life, I wanted to be in church. And my pastor reminded me that he used to give out awards every year for the person who has a perfect attendance. And I had perfect attendance for 8 years in the running until I left for college. And I wanted to be in church. All the adults weren't there every week, but I was there in church every week because there was something that drew me to be there. And it was the Lord. And I didn't know that. I did not understand why I was so drawn. And then I'm reminded about Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And it didn't really, I did not understand that until I got older, because I was still living this double life, even though I had the calling. I couldn't understand it. And being that I was growing up in a Korean church and a Korean Salvation Army where they spoke Korean, not English, and I didn't speak much Korean, I didn't want to be in church. Even though I wanted to be in church, I did not want to be in church. And so I found a way to get out of being in church and still be there and still feel the love that they have for me. And so I volunteered to teach Sunday school for the little kids. But I was teaching because I didn't want to be in while service was going on. And I was living this double life at that time. And finally, God just broke me at the age of 7. As I was getting older, God was leading this people into my life that was speaking truth into my life that I am so grateful for. I remember going to college. I went to a Baruch College in New York City, and I met this young lady. And I was trying to escape the world by being very involved in theater. I loved acting. I loved theater. And I got involved in theater. And I signed up for this class, a drama class. And she came to me and she said, Mike, are you a Christian? And at this time, I was going through a depression. I was going through hardships. And because I grew up in the church and because I have accepted Christ when I was a young age, I covered my mouth and I looked at her and said, yes, I am. Yes, I am. And she looked at me and she said, okay, you're a Christian. And then we walk into the classroom and the teacher partner people up. And guess who my partner was? This young lady. And she and I had to work together to get junior high school class ready to put a performance on. I was the director for this play, along co-director with her to put this performance together at a, and I was like, wow, Lord, what are you doing? And he was working in me at that time. And he was moving in my life at that time, and I didn't even know it. And God allowed situations to just shape me, to form in me. And I left there. As I was walking in that journey, and I was meeting her and getting to know her and talking with her, God was using her to minister to me in a time of loneliness. And something happened in her life. Her house was getting robbed. And the Holy Spirit just talked to me and said, give her a call. That day when I gave her a call, her house was being robbed. And if I didn't call her, she would not have been alive today. It was amazing. And it was in a dangerous neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. And my parents would not let me go. At that moment when I said, Mom, I need to go to Brownsville, New York, my mom looked at me and said, go and minister to her. And I was shocked because my mom would not allow me to go there. And she allowed me to go to this neighborhood to make sure she was safe. Because of that phone call, because of that, because God was talking to me and nudging me in that way. And I didn't understand who the Holy Spirit was. I had no idea. I grew up in the church. I learned about God. I learned about Jesus, but I really had no idea who the Holy Spirit was. And God opened this door for me to understand that it was all this time through this whole life that I was trying to understand faith on my own. And while there was this part of God, or the third part of God, this third person in God, who could have taught me all this along. And I was trying to do this all by myself, this Christian walk. And he spoke to me that day, said, according to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and you know that very well. I'm going to quote it right. It said, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him and he will make your path straight. And once I learned to trust him, once I learned to trust who Jesus was, it was an amazing journey. When I learned to trust who God was, it was an amazing journey. When I learned to trust who the Holy Spirit was, it was an amazing journey. After that, there was a day when I went back home. I said, Lord, I submit myself back to you. I give myself back to you. And I rededicated my life that day. And I said, Lord, you need to get me out of this rut. You need to get me out of this depression. You need to get me out of this place, this dark place that I am in right now. And so the Lord led me to a Christian college, and I went reluctantly because I know that I had the calling, but I was not a gifted speaker. When I was young, I had this thing in my throat called polyps. I didn't know how to talk. I don't know the Bible that well. I really didn't know the word that well. I didn't understand my faith that well. I didn't understand anything that well. I just came to the Lord again, rededicate my life, and God was leading me to a college, a Christian college, to go for a degree. And I went there not to really get a degree, but to really learn who God was, and to really learn who Jesus was, and to really learn who the Holy Spirit was. So I made a journey over to Nyack College, a Christian Missionary Alliance College, and I went there to study. And God just took that time to discipline me and disciple me and show me who he was. And then after 4 years, I ran out of money, and I said, Lord, I have half a semester left. I ran out of money, and my mom looked at me and said, Mike, go back to school. I went back to school. I said, Lord, if you really called me into the ministry, you need to find me a life partner. You need to find my wife for me, because I'm not good in this area, nor I want the right person in my life. And the Lord brought my wife to me. The Lord brought my wife to me. And I remember being in that building, being in the computer lab in college, and I was standing in one side of the room, and I looked over to Amanda, and I said to my roommate, I said, that's the girl I'm going to marry.
Mhm.
And my roommate looked at me and was like, what is he talking about? That's the girl I'm going to marry. A week
Hey.
later, I asked her to the homecoming. We went to the homecoming together. And 2 years later, we were married. And and it was a weird thing, but God, I really believe God brought my wife into my life according to his purpose and according to his will. And we have been in the ministry together for over 19 years now, serving the Lord faithfully in the Salvation Army. But more important, that God has used her to help me learn more about him. God has used my wife to teach me about tithing. She has taught me how to be more disciplined, more organized. He has used her to teach me how to be more devoted to him. And I thank the Lord every day for my wife. In our ministry, one of
Major,
yeah,
for 1 second, we can hear you nicely, but just adjust your camera a little bit.
okay.
You get that handsome face back in there.
Can I take a moment for a second?
Sure.
There you go. Better?
That's it. Mhm.
So when my wife and I went to the Salvation Army Training College in 2000 and we were graduating in 2002. 9/11 happened while we were in training college. So our second year in training college, we ended up serving at the World Trade Center. I grew up in New York City. I grew up in New York City. I went to college in Manhattan near the World Trade Center. I worked near the World Trade Center. And when we were in training school, the training school was in Suffern, New York, and we were sent down there. And when I went down there, I was crushed. Really, really hurt, really crushed to go down there and see what I call home being destroyed. Going through all that rut, going through all those, seeing papers flying all over the place, seeing the buildings burnt, seeing all those things, and watching this, and I lost something that day. But during that time, my wife was pregnant with our daughter, and I came, and when I was down there, the only thing that really kept me going was knowing that God was using my wife and my daughter to bring me out of it. Honestly, to tell you guys, if I didn't have my wife, who God has let into my life, and God has not given me my daughter, I would not have made it. God has used my wife and my daughter to bring me out of that tough time. And I thank the Lord for it. They were part of my salvation. They helped me through it, and I'm grateful for that. So the lesson I've learned throughout my life is that simple verse, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. And I truly believe that if we trust in God, no matter what obstacle that might be put in your way, no matter what situation it is, God can use that to help us learn and help us grow. And he can straighten our path out. And I'm amazed. I'm still in awe to this day how God has transformed my life from my humble beginnings to now, and how God has shown me everything that has happened in my life had its purpose. And everything that happened in my life allowed me to be better and allowed me to understand who he is. Do I want to go back and relive those things? Absolutely not. But am I grateful for it now? Absolutely. And I am so thankful that he used those times to help me understand who he is. And I could appreciate everything that we have gone through, my wife and I together. And I could appreciate everything that I've gone through as a child, because everything that I went through, God used in my life to help me understand him better. So I am so thankful for my relationship with God. And it just draws me closer knowing that my God, my Lord, my Jesus had my back the whole entire time since I was a little baby. Even before I was born, he knew who I was, and he said, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." And I thank the Lord every day that I know that I can share that testimony with anybody that comes my way, knowing that he brought me out some dark days, dark times, but allowed me to see the light. And I am grateful. Steve.
It's awesome. Thank you so much.